In my youth, I was a traveller. My plan was to visit the entire Foundation, but a dramatic injury put a stop to that a few years ago. One of my more memorable adventures from my youth involves an enterprising Tereri by the name of Umka, who I met one Kip in Pin. She was trading various traditional trinkets from her homeland. Many of them depicted a dark figure with long, indistinct limbs. It was the Kahi. There's a period of 6 weeks during Kif where the sun doesn't rise in the frozen north of Tereri. It is a period of festivity and celebration, but also of solemnitude and reverence. It is said that the dark weeks are when the spirit world passes closest to Foundation, and it is at this time that the Kahi comes to prowl. The story goes that the Kahi will take children, specifically children who do not listen to their elders, and drag them to the spirit world, never to be seen again. Umka and I talked a long time about the Kahi and the sacred Tereri ceremony meant in part to ward the spirit off. I concluded that I simply had to see it for myself and invited myself to stay with Umka and her family during Kif. I was simply trying to fully understand an important cultural event. It had nothing to do with the fact that Umka was, and still is, quite beautiful. Upon my arrival in Tereri, I was struck by a few things. Firstly, I'd never felt such cold in all my life. I was very glad for the furs that Umka brought with her to greet me at that port. Secondly, I soon found out that my limited Tereri wouldn't get me very far. However, it would improve over the season, but every conversation was a challenge. Finally, Umka's words had done nothing to prepare me for the depths of the darkness. It felt somehow darker than night. There was something more imposing about it, almost like it tugged at the edges of your vision. Soon we arrived at the settlement, however, and the lamps that hung from every available hook, rope or corner helped to keep the darkness at bay. The lamps were astounding. The locals used simple dyes and special powders to colour the lighting elements, so the entire settlement was bathed in a multicoloured glow. Umka led me to a gathering of people around a bonfire, and we sat and watched the proceedings together. I assumed that Tereri used the myth of the Kahi as a way of scaring the children into behaving, but the entire community engages in the rituals meant to keep it away with an almost frightening earnestness. Even the oldest and wisest members of the community seem to believe that the Kahi is a real threat. That doesn't mean the Kahi ceremony is an entirely stoic affair, however. We sat in a circle around the elders and listened to tall tales of spirits and men. There was an exchange of handmade gifts and artworks as a way of showing appreciation for loved ones. Many of the adults in the group were wearing whimsical hats fashioned from the spoils of a long Kif hunting trips and singing songs. One man wearing a giant set of antlers sang a beautiful haunting song about a type of creature known as Natik. Natik are apparently creatures so ferocious and dangerous that they are the only things capable of killing the Kahi. It was at this point that the lights began to dim. I saw a shape approaching from the darkness. The stories and songs began to fade away. I looked to Umka for reassurance, but she had bowed her head and was whispering something under her breath. I have to admit this whole thing was starting to get to me. Everyone around me was bowing towards the shape and whispering. I decided to follow suit and duck down. I began to see some features of the shape as it approached the bonfire. It seemed humanoid in composition, but it had great, big, red eyes, imposing horns, and a gaping maw. It slunk unnaturally towards us, not making a sound. My fear soon gave way to shame, though, as I realized the shape was, in fact, a man in a suit. Furry, thick, and with a terrifying mask, but a suit nonetheless. Umka looked up at my face, which had gone quite pale, and stifled a giggle. At this point, the rest of the group raised their heads and arms and began chanting something I couldn't understand. The man in the suit danced around the fire with strange jerking motions. The ceremonial suit is a representation of a Natik. The idea is that Natik terrify the Kahi, so hopefully the suit will trick it into leaving the village alone. The light shone with fresh brightness and the chants got louder and more fervent. A carafe was passed around containing strong wine. I don't remember a great deal after that point. The next morning I woke in Umka's family hut under a stack of fur and blankets. The warmth made it difficult to emerge from under it, but I had a powerful thirst which overpowered my comfort. When I walked into the central room, her mother and father, Enola and Arnak, were sitting by the fire stirring a pot of something that smelled amazing. They turned to me with warm smiles and offered me a mug of warm tea and a box wrapped in colourful paper. I took a sip of delicious tea, thanked her for the gift and opened it. It was a beautiful hand-carved bone knife made by Enola herself. The craftsmanship was exceptional, and the blade was amongst the sharpest I'd seen. I still keep it in a drawer by my bed. Shortly after, Umka herself came in from the cold, trailing snow and mud on the rug. She was dragging a knapsack full to bursting with herbs and plants. It seemed she had been out to the local storehouse for some essentials. She accepted a bowl of stew from her parents, and we settled in to enjoy breakfast together. Much of the rest of my time in Terari passed like this. We would spend our time relaxing in the warmth of the family hut for the day, then at regular intervals we would venture out to the bonfire to sing, dance and drink wine. The strange thing about having no sunlight is that there's no way to tell when one day ends and another begins. Time begins to lose meaning, and it's easy to become disorientated. After some period of time, could have been a week, maybe 2, my perception of things started to warp. The darkness started to feel more immense and oppressive. The lights felt like they were somehow less effective. I don't know how best to describe it. But the sky seemed to throb and swell in the corner of my eye. It was during this period where stranger things started to happen. We received word that some of the children in a nearby community had gone missing.